Good evening, Chef Sinead here, and we are in our final week of BK 141, week 6 for frozen desserts this week. So we've got a lot to go over. I have a couple things that I want to talk about before we get to kind of the production side of it. So first off, because it is final week, we have our final exam to do this week. Now, let me go ahead and share my screen. That way you guys know exactly where to find that. It's going to be all the way at the bottom of your week 6 section. So all the way down here, final exam. You do have 90 minutes from the time that you start it. So you want to make sure that once you kind of get in there, you don't want to close it out. It's not something that you can kind of jump back in and revisit. It's open book, open note, everything you need to take it, have that on hand. All of that's perfectly fine. But it does need to be completed in the 90 minutes once you start it. Did anybody have a question on that? No? All right, no problem. So another thing, any makeup work. I know that there's, we've been used to having like makeup section, specific makeup assignments. As I've been mentioning throughout the class, there isn't a specific makeup spot anymore, but those of you who have maybe had assignments that you haven't had turned in, you've been doing really well to stay in communication with me. Continue to do so. If there's anything that maybe needed to be revisited, anything that you have not been able to get done, especially given the circumstances right now, which also leads me into the extended makeup period. I sent out kind of a guide for you all to take a look at in case you're, kind of struggling with getting ingredients right now. If you haven't, whatever your situation may be right now, if you haven't been able to get an assignment in, what we're doing is starting April 8th, so that's when the new block starts. Beginning April 8th, you have an extra 30 days to submit to me by email. You just kind of put your name, what assignment it is, what class it is. You send that to me and I'll be able to grade that, go in, do a grade change for you. So you have that extended period where anybody can take advantage of it. We want to make sure that you're able to kind of get all your work submitted. We want to, you guys are at the end of the program or almost. We have 121 and then your externship. But it's really important to, stick with it right now. Like, I know times seem kind of rough and there's a lot of kind of intricacies and complications, but we want to help you however we can. So please stay in communication. If you need that extra time, take advantage of it. It's there for you. Don't worry about any late penalties. There's none of that going on. Do your best to try to get that in tonight. And then you'll see me start grading them, grading your assignments, and you'll start seeing, of course, your overall grade changing as you do that. But yes, you have time, you have that time available to you. I think that's everything that we needed to talk about. Also Sunday night. Sunday night is the deadline for everything this week, which we'll go over again before we finish out class. But everything is due Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, because we need to, all the chefs have to get everything graded, get all of that over to the registrar, because we do have that week spring break after this class. So remember, you guys, you're going to take a week off, come back on April 8th. There will be time to kind of get everybody put into their new classes, which you should be hearing from the registrar what your next class will be. You should be hearing from them shortly if you haven't already done so. But if you needed to take advantage of that extra 30-day period, kind of how that would work is I would close out your grade, I would close out the class on the Monday. And what you would do is whatever work you have, let's say, you did it on that Monday, you're like, chef, I have it. I did it already. I want to give it to you. Hold on to it, because we're going to wait until the block fully ends, until it's completely closed out. And then everything is going to get opened back up again. And then at that point, of course, we'll go on break. But once April 8th comes around, you will then at that point be able to go in and submit whatever it is that you've done that needs to come my way for late work or whatever. And again, there's no late penalty on there at all. Does that make sense to everybody so far? Does anybody have any specific questions on how all that's going down? If so, if you don't want to ask in class or you don't have any, just reach out to me, shoot me a text or whatever. That way you know exactly if you have any specific questions, you can always just talk to me privately about it. No worries there. All of that aside, how did week 5 go? Who wants to talk about their poached fruit? I've been seeing a lot of submissions coming through, seeing some people doing it with syrup, some with wine. Isn't it so pretty, like how the fruit takes on like that red color on the outside? Who wants to chat about their poached fruit experience? I know somebody out there. Was it good? Was it bad? Did you like poached fruit? Maybe it's something you've never had before, and this is kind of like your intro into it, and now it's like your favorite thing ever. Let's see, Carmen's are in the fridge waiting to be plated, and it smelled amazing. What did you poach in, Carmen? Syrup with cinnamon. Yeah, cinnamon has such a nice smell. It's so warm and cozy, isn't it? It just makes you feel all nice when you smell cinnamon. What were you gonna say, Jean? Oh, you're muted. Hold on.
Sorry about that.
Oh, there you go.
I did both white and red wine because I just wanted to see what the difference was between the two. And I liked the red wine better. It was a Cabernet, and it was amazing.
Nice.
It was really good.
What kind of white wine did you use?
It was a Riesling, and I really thought that the Riesling would be sweeter.
Yeah.
It wasn't. The red wine was better.
Very nice. Yeah, red wine definitely does have a much stronger flavor, so it comes through really, really well. I like to poach in like as far as white wines go, I like to do like a Chardonnay. I like to do some of the sweet, but like a little bit on the drier side, because by the time you add the sugar in there, like I feel like it has more of an intense wine flavor if it's not like a sweeter wine. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? And then when you throw that sugar in there, it sweetens it up, and it's just perfumed. It's like a essence of wine when you use the white wine. But the red wine, it's so pretty, isn't it? I love the color when you poach it in the white wine. Wendy will be finishing hers tonight. Awesome. I look forward to taking a look at that. Let's see, Francine. Okay, so Francine poached her fruit. She dipped it in caramel and let it, like that caramel kind of drip off of there. Oh, it's cool. And then we dipped some in chocolate and candied a little piece of it. The chocolate sounds delicious. I like chocolate with like chocolate and port. If you used a port to poach your fruit, beautiful combo there. Diane hasn't worked on it yet. Totally fine. You've got time. Moscato with cinnamon. Oh, you guys are doing some fun stuff. Yeah, Cindy did the brown butter and rum sauce. You text me about that. We were chatting about that. I liked kind of the warm flavors of like your brown butter has that nuttiness. The cinnamon is a really warm spice as well. So all of it just kind of bounces off of each other. Good. So I'm glad to hear that this week is going well for everybody. Kind of bouncing off of, a lot of chocolate work. It's really, temperamental, going into macarons. That's really finicky as well. I think the poached fruit is kind of just like a breath, kind of take a deep breath and relax when you make the poached fruit. Do you guys feel that way? It was kind of just like let's take a break from all of this like precise macarons and chocolate. Oh, Sheena made her first caramel sauce. So Sheena, did you use just did you take your sugar to caramel stage and then pour cream in? Or did you have like butter going on in there? Caramel and then cream. Nice, yeah. So I like to do my creams like or my caramel sauce like that. You can have butter in there. I find sometimes I just don't like the mouthfeel so much of sauces that have the butter and the cream. When I'm doing just like a caramel tart or caramel candies, yeah, definitely butter's going in there. But for just a sauce, I like to just add the cream in there as well. And it's really cool because you can just kind of like add the cream in and then adjust as necessary. If you need it a little bit thinner, just warm up some more cream and add a little bit more cream. You can definitely use that for this week as well. Good thinking. You can, if it's a little bit thicker, you can like swirl it through your ice cream or your semi-Freddo, but we'll definitely get there. So let's go ahead and get going on week 6 then. So this week, of course, we're doing frozen desserts. Now I'm going to start off with talking about like the semi-Freddo, what, you know, kind of the assigned class assignment is, but I also want to give you guys some other options just in case eggs, dairy, anything like that, in case any of those items are a little bit tricky to get your hands on. I do have some options for you that require pretty much nothing more than some sugar and water and flavoring. So no worries, we will be making frozen desserts. No matter what you're making this week, we've got options for you. Let's go ahead and kind of talk just a little bit about, you know, the science behind ice cream. So there's a lot of science going on with ice cream. We're talking about freezing point. You know, you have to get your base to freeze. And when you're freezing, you also are taking into consideration some other factors, because if you just put an ice cream base in the freezer, it's going to be a block. So there, you know, we have to churn it. Ice cream is a churned dessert, a churned frozen dessert. It works air in there, and that helps to keep it from freezing. But freezing point, by definition, is the temperature at which as many water molecules are attaching to the ice that are leaving the ice. So what does that mean? Basically, what's happening is that you know, water's molecules H2O. So you want everything to be equal, like as everything is freezing or leaving, everything is staying, which means that it's stagnant. And that's why frozen things are hard, because if more molecules are leaving, that means that it's going to be liquid. And then as more water molecules stay at the same rate as they're leaving, then it becomes that frozen solid. Guys, just want to make sure that you're on mute. That way there's no like background noise or anything going on. So as we're making ice cream and other frozen desserts, because there's quite a few different types of frozen desserts, something else that you're going to be taking into consideration is freezing point depression. Now, what this is basically what control we have over the freezing point. So we're going to go ahead and artificially lower the freezing point of the water by adding a solvent. Some solvents include either sugar or salt. So have you ever done that science experiment where, like in, you know, chemistry class, and you've got your ice, you throw some salt on there, and you put like your little baggie of milk or cream and flavor, and you shake it up, and it creates ice cream. So what you're doing is you're lowering, by adding the salt to the ice, you're lowering the freezing point of the ice so that it's cold enough to freeze the liquid that you're putting in there. Now, you're not just like pouring the liquid in, it would be in a little baggie, but it's cold enough. It goes to like -6 degrees Fahrenheit, which is of course below, or -6 Celsius, which is right below freezing. So it is able to freeze the base that you're putting in there. And the reason that that's important is it helps with mouthfeel, it helps with body, with texture, all of that. And when you are working with frozen desserts, there's crystals prevalent. So remember how we had like crystals with caramel? Well, there's crystals in this world also. And when you're making a really kind of creamy texture, a smooth texture, you don't want large ice crystals. If you have large ice crystals, it becomes gritty. So it's very important to monitor your churning, to monitor how much stabilizers, emulsifiers that are getting added into the base, because it all affects the texture or the body and the mouthfeel of your frozen dessert. So there are 5 components to ice cream. Your ice crystals, the crystals like I was just talking about, gives your ice cream its body. It makes it solid. Depending on how large or small the ice crystals are will determine kind of the texture of the ice cream, if it's going to be grainy or if it's going to be super, super smooth. So as your ice cream is churning, if you're making a churned frozen dessert, you're stopping those you're stopping those ice crystals from getting large. They stay nice and small. Another component to ice cream would be your fat content. So whether that be from milk, milk, butter, fats, it adds richness, flavor, and it helps to stabilize your base. Sweeteners, of course, you can use different types of sugar, you can use honeys, and then air. So that's what's happening, whether you're making a churned dessert or a still dessert. So air, we call that, like the amount of air that gets worked into the base, we call that overrun. So you can have a really creamy, really decadent dessert or frozen dessert that only has like a 20% overrun. So what does that mean? That the amount or the volume, the amount of base that you had increases by 20%. And that's the overrun. Kind of commercial desserts, commercial ice creams, that you're finding in like grocery stores, sometimes they'll be upwards of like 100% overrun, which means they've taken this base, they've increased that in volume 100%. So they've basically doubled it in size. But if you think about gelato, do you guys find gelato to be more creamy or less creamy than an ice cream? If you've had gelato before, what would you say? You find it to be more creamy. Now, gelato has less fat than ice cream does. It's just how it's made. It's less fat, it's less churning time, but the quality of the ingredients that you're using when making gelato, it gives you a better mouthfeel. It makes it feel like it's creamier. It makes it feel like it's more decadent, just because it's a lot cleaner on the tongue. So it doesn't give you that, like, it's creamy without having the extra stabilizers, without adding the extra emulsifiers in there, even though it's less fat and it's less churning time. It's kind of cool how that works, isn't it? So those are the components. Oh, and the other components of your ice cream would be anything that you're going to add in there, any extra solids, any like non-fat milk solids, any proteins, flavorings, like if you're going to put cookies in there, that would be, that extra kind of fifth component of the ice cream. Some of the emulsifiers that you'll find in kind of commercial ice cream will be things like sorbitol, polysorbate. So if you kind of look on the back of your ice cream and you see like this long laundry list of ingredients, those are going to be emulsifiers as well as stabilizers. And the reason that that's so important is because ice cream is fat and water, which we know don't like each other. So you need to make an emulsion, and to keep it on the shelf a little bit longer, because you have these ice creams and they stay on the shelf for like ever. It's because there's these added emulsifiers as well as stabilizers to keep everything good, to keep everything with that creamy consistency. Some other stabilizers you'll see would be like pectin, gelatin, any different starches. Those are the ones that you'll see across the board. Now, when you're talking about like really kind of high quality frozen desserts, it will be a lot less of those added stabilizers. We'll start seeing eggs and egg yolks being used as emulsifiers and things like that. And then I have this kind of cool little handy guide here showing different fat percents. So kind of an ice cream made at home, you're looking at about like a 19% butter fat ratio in there. And then if you jump all the way down to like a sorbet, we're at 0% because sorbet doesn't have any dairy added to it, which we are going to talk a little bit about sorbet, because if you have an ice cream churn at home, that could be an option for you if you can't get your hands on any dairy, or if you just want to make it, to be quite honest. So I want to talk about, before we move on to like sherbets and sorbets and all of that, I do want to go over the semi-Freddo recipe with you. That is what's on the class page for this week, because you don't need any extra equipment. You don't need a churn, you don't need a blender, you don't need anything. You just need your bowl, a whisk, bain-marie, and you're good to go. So let's go ahead and bring up that formula real quick, just so that we can go over that before we move on through. So this one is going to call for eggs. You're going to use whole eggs. You're also going to use some extra egg yolks. These two ingredients here are going to be your emulsifiers. They're going to, of course, be your fat in there alongside your heavy cream. But the egg yolks, as we know, has emulsifying properties in it. So that's going to help your fat and your water content stay together in your ice cream. We're going to use 150 grams of eggs. So we're looking at about 3 whole eggs there, as well as 40 grams of egg yolks. So you're looking at about 2 egg yolks there. 500 grams of heavy cream, 200 grams of your sugar, and then some vanilla extract, 5 grams. Feel free to amp that up if you want to. If you have vanilla bean, cut it open, scrape it out, go for it. So your steps are going to be to place your eggs as well as your egg yolks, vanilla, and sugar in a bowl. So we're going to do bain-marie. You can whisk it together off of the heat and then stick it on your simmering water. You want it to become thick and pale. You should be able to get it to ribbon stage. You should be able to do your figure 8 test with it, and that 8 should kind of stay there before it starts to like ooze or whatever into the rest of it. So once you've hit that stage there, that's going to be in one separate bowl. In another bowl, you want to whisk your heavy cream to it says stiff peak. I would go for more of like a medium peak. When you whip things to stiff peak and you combine it with the base, you're more going to be apt to overworking it because it's going to be stiff. So it's going to take you a lot of working to get it mixed in, to get it combined. So aiming for like a medium peak is totally fine. Francine asked, can anything sub for heavy cream, or can you make heavy cream from milk and something else? So with, as far as cream goes, Francine, I would either use heavy cream. You'll also see whipping cream. There's not enough fat content in a milk to whip up the way that cream does. Something else that you can use would be coconut cream. You can use that. That will whip up kind of nicely, and it will make your dessert dairy free. So you can definitely substitute coconut. But as far as like fat content goes, you do want to be using cream instead of instead of milk. Does that answer your question? Awesome. So once you have whipped up your cream, then you're going to fold those two together. So your pâte à bombe mixture, which is your egg yolks, your whole eggs, your sugar, and your flavoring, and then you're going to combine that with your whipped cream. And once you combine that, pour that into, it says a 2-liter capacity, what you're looking for, basically like a bread tin, or if you have, those glass dishes, you can use like a 9x9 glass dish, something like that. But a rectangle would be common of kind of semi-Fredos. You're going to put it in the rectangle because then you're going to slice it. Most of the time it is served sliced. You can scoop it out, it's totally fine as well. But oftentimes you'll find that it was just set in a rectangular dish and then sliced up and served, which I pulled up on the Google some plating options for you to browse through. So let's see, kind of this one here is like a tiramisu semi-Fredo, but you can see how they just kind of slice it. This one I thought was cool, but what is that, mint? We don't want mint, right? We're done with mint, guys, unless it makes sense. So they've got it sliced here, a little bit of sauce on the plate. Looks like they've even got some sorbet on there as well. There was one in here that was kind of served whole. Well, here's another sliced one. There we go. There's another sliced one there. It looks like we've got some cherries. Cherry and almond is such a good flavor combo. So those are just some ideas. You don't have to go full on plated, like that. Let's pull up the requirements actually while we're here. All right. So yeah, it doesn't have to be like a complete plated dessert this week. I'm just looking for that final product in vessel ready to serve. I would like to see it like sliced or scooped out just so that I can check on consistency. I don't want you to just kind of like show me the pan and then maybe underneath is like not even set at all, which brings me to that last little piece. Make sure that you allow it to set for 6 hours or overnight. Overnight would be better, just so that it has time to fully set. Let's see, Teresa, I will message you about that after class. That way we can kind of chat about this past week's assignment. All right, is that okay?
Yes,
but yeah, no problem. You want to make sure that you're allowing that to set overnight so that you don't have to kind of get a whole plate of dessert, but do show me a slice of. Can you use your KitchenAid ice cream maker? Yeah, so that brings me to, let's see. There are some ice cream recipes in your book. So chapter 21 is where you're going to be this week. There's tons of recipes in there for ice cream, churned ice cream. Let me see. So if you don't want to do the semi-Fredo, you can most definitely browse through your book, chapter 21, and there are going to be different ice cream recipes. They have like a dulce de leche, they've got a chocolate ice cream, and then just follow the manufacturer of your ice cream maker. Follow the manufacturer's directions of how to churn it, because everybody or every manufacturer is going to be just a little bit different as far as like time and capacity and things like that. So look through that chapter and pull out an ice cream recipe from there and go for it. But your semi-Fredo, you do want to go ahead and stick that, you know, kind of in the pan, because semi-Fredo is a still, it's a still frozen dessert. So there's churned and there's still. Some still things would be semi-Fredo. A bomb, you know, like when you have like the ice cream kind of in the dome shape and it's filled with all kind of goodness, that would be your bomb. Some other still desserts, parfaits, souffles, frozen souffles, those are still frozen. Now, even though they don't require churning, you are still incorporating air, but you're incorporating air in the beginning. You're incorporating it before you stick it in your freezer. Just like how we're whisking up our bomb mixture, we're whipping up the whipped cream. So we're incorporating the air before it goes into the freezer. Whereas with churned ice cream, you are incorporating the air as it's freezing. And even when you churn it, it's going to come off soft. It should be like a soft serve consistency. And then when you stick it in the freezer, it's going to completely firm up. It's not going to get as hard as, say, a semi-Fredo would, which semi-Fredo means semi-frozen. It's not going to get that hard because the ice crystals are a lot smaller than a semi-Fredo. So those are kind of your intro to like churned and still frozen. So some other things that I want you guys to have a look at this week, if dairy or eggs is just a struggle, I've got a sorbet option for you, or granita. Granita is going to be the kind of all you need there is a syrup. But if you have a ice cream maker and you want to have a go at sorbet, that's also going to be in the same chapter. Chapter 21 is where you can find all of your frozen goodness. Let's bring that up here. So sorbet, this on page 560 is where you would find sorbet. So if you have a ice cream maker and you want to give this a try, sorbet is based off of a syrup, a sugar syrup, and then you have a flavor, a flavoring. So kind of if you look at the lemon or the lime sorbet, what you do is you make your base syrup, but then you kind of scroll down here and see what else it tells you to add in. So it wants you to add some zest, some lemon juice, and then some more water. This water measurement is in addition to this syrup. So this is just, that's your syrup base. Every sorbet is based off of a syrup. So you have that, and then you're combining it with this, allow it to completely cool, and then you would go ahead and churn it to whatever your manufacturer is telling you to do. Sorbet is considered an ice. So is granita. Sorbet is kind of the French word for it. Sherbets kind of is like the American version of sherbet has dairy in there. It's like kind of in limbo. It's between a sorbet and an ice cream. There's not as much dairy as an ice cream has, but it's not completely dairy free. And then so that's sherbet, and then an ice, it will also sometimes have egg whites in there too. And ice will never have dairy at all, but sometimes it will have egg whites in there. So those are kind of some of the terminologies that you also might see. Sorbet kind of gets thrown in. Like in America, we very distinctly recognize sherbet as having dairy, sorbet having no dairy at all, but a sorbet is considered an ice, and it can kind of interchange. Those two terminologies can interchange. Let's see. Anybody have questions so far on semifreddo, ice cream, or sorbet before I head into granita, which would be your kind of most basic frozen dessert option for this week? All right. I went digging in some archives to find this video for you guys. This is from a few years ago, so it's gonna look different than the videos that are up right now, but I wanted to show you this. That way you have, everybody see it fine? That way you have an option besides something that involves like dairy or eggs. And also, like I said, you don't need a churn for this either. We don't need the music. So green tea granita. You don't have to use the green tea. You could flavor it a different way. I'm going to show you an espresso or a coffee option as well. So what you do here is you combine your lemon juice she has, some sugar, some water, and you're going to put that on your stove top and bring that to a boil. Sorry, guys. Let me see if I can. Hold on, pause for a cause. Sorry, guys. All right, I want control over the video, so the big screen wasn't working for me. Okay, so she's bringing that to a boil. She's going to bring that up to a boil, add in her tea bags there, leave them for about 20 minutes, and then strain it. I don't know if you've ever noticed, if you guys make a lot of tea, but if you kind of squeeze the tea bags, it becomes a little bit more bitter. So just let them drip off. You don't have to worry about squeezing them out, and just let them drip naturally. Pour it into a pan. You can, she's using a hotel pan in this video, but you can also use, like if you have, you know, those little glass dishes, like a 9x9 or something like that. Any of those is fine. But basically what you're doing is just revisiting it like every 15 to 20 minutes to break up those crystals. So granita is going to have the largest ice crystals out of everything. It's going to be really gritty. It's going to be very snow cone-esque. And the reason that this is because you're not incorporating any air into this. You are not adding any fat in there. What else? We're not churning it as it's freezing. So there's some pretty big ice crystals in here, but the flavor is so beautiful, and it just kind of, it's very clean. It's a very, very clean dessert for sure. So that is an option there for you. I'm going to post this on the class page. Here's the formula for it. It's got 170 grams of sugar, 840 milliliters of water, some green tea, and then some lemon juice. And then, of course, the directions for it there. In the class, in the textbook, this one here, a coffee or espresso. I love coffee, so I hope that you guys have coffee in your house and you want to try this. Even if it's not for the assignment, it's delicious. You just want some sugar. We've got, what, 125 grams, 1 liter of coffee or very strong espresso. Dissolve the sugar into the coffee. Same thing that you just saw, pour it into some type of pan where you can easily use like a fork or a spoon. You can use your whisk. Really anything you can get your hands on. You just want to be breaking it up because you don't want it to freeze into a solid block. You want it to have the little crystals. Repeat those steps every 15-20 minutes. Cover and store in the freezer, and that's that on that one. So how does that look? What are we thinking, guys? What kind of things do you, I want to see a vote of who wants to do what this week. We have a lot of options this week. I want to make sure that you guys are feeling good about going into frozen desserts. Semifreddo from Sheena. I like semifreddos. I like ice cream over ices, I would say. Are you guys, who says sherbet and who says sherbet? My entire life I've said sherbet, and then I realized, or I was taught, there's no second R. It's just sherbet, which is just, it's weird to say sometimes. I want to say sherbet, and it's not. Bert, yes, Bert. Everybody says Bert, but it's not sherbet, and I can't retrain myself. Ah, Diva, you say sherbet. Good for you. Good for you. Gene too. You guys are making me feel bad. Come on, guys. All right. So those are your options this week. Oh, let's look at some or no, I'm stuck on sherbet now. Let's look at some granita platings. It's so simple, you would think that maybe like there's not a lot of options for you to plate it, but there are. You can use it as like a component on a dish, or you can have it solely as like the main item. Let's see, we've got like a lavender gelée here, some lavender cream, a white peach granita. That's pretty. I like the colors on this one a lot. A lot of times you'll see it paired, a granita will be paired with a different frozen dessert. You might see like a sorbet on the plate, maybe even a sherbet on the plate. But you'll often see it as part of or as a component. But if it is plated on its own, it will very much be in a very pretty glass, something like that. Just because of the nature of it, you know, you're not going to just stick it on a bowl. Like whenever you're plating, you always want to be thinking about, well, what makes sense? Like what eating experience makes sense for what I'm making, right? I think I showed you everything I wanted to show this week. Let's stop sharing. So what are the things that we have due this week, guys? Who can tell me one thing that we have due this week? One very, very important thing besides your production. What's due this week? Finals. Yay! Final exam. Make sure you get that done. The final exam, I don't think there will be, there will not be extensions on that. The extensions, that long period we were talking about, is for assignments, quizzes, you know, all your knowledge checks, conversion checks, discussion forums. All of that falls into the extension category. Your final exam, from what I know at this point, if anything changes, I will tell you, that does need to be done by Sunday night, 11:59 p.m. You have only a knowledge check this week, no conversion checks, so you don't have to worry about that. And then we have very many different options for your frozen dessert. If you have not done your poached fruit, continue to work on that. Continue to work on getting that to me. And communication, that's just kind of the biggest takeaway of all of this, of everything going on right now, which I do hope you all are safe and healthy and good to go. Communicate with me as things happen, as things pop up. You all have been really, really good about it, of letting me know what's going on, because that's the only way I can help you, and that's what I'm here for, is to help and to make sure that you guys are successful. Does anybody have any questions, any specific kind of production questions before we break off for the evening on like any of the options for this week? Or, you know, actually, Teresa, we've got some more time. Did you want to, because I know that some people still haven't done their poached fruit. So remind me, let's see, your question about the pears, 2 different red wines, red wine for cooking and red wine vinegar. You want to use red wine. You can use red wine for cooking. You would want to more pick something that you would want to drink. If you want to drink it, then you would want to eat it. And the reason I say that, I know a lot of people don't drink wine, and that's totally fine. You don't even have to use wine, by the way, if you don't like wine. But you just want it to be something that you're going to enjoy. So if you like to drink something, you'll most likely like to eat something. Sometimes those cooking wines, they're not like the best quality. Like you wouldn't drink a cooking wine. They're just strictly for like making sauces and things. But when wine is kind of like in the forefront, you do want it to be something that somebody would enjoy drinking, not just only eating, if that makes sense there. And then,
yes, it does.
yeah, and then a vinegar would just be too pungent. It would be, they've taken that wine and fermented it even more, and it would be like drinking like a lemon juice or something like that. So you don't want to do vinegar. Let's see. Francine did cinnamon, brown sugar, star anise. Yeah, so it doesn't have to be wine. It can be a wine. It could be any type of syrup with like different aromatics, like Francine did with the cinnamon, the star anise. Honestly, if you can't even find any of that, just a syrup, just a sugar syrup. And I think it was Cindy I was talking to, maybe, I can't remember who it was. If you still have that syrup, Simple syrup stays for quite some time in the fridge. You can hold that off in like a jar. You can use it to drizzle over like a bundt cake or something like that. I know, if anybody's celebrating Easter that's popping up soon, you could take your poaching liquid, which has been cooked down. It's become nice and kind of syrupy at this point. You could use that to make like a poke cake, make a bundt cake. You can use it for like if you're making a layer cake, like a sponge cake, you can spray your layers. You can use that as a syrup there. You would just want to strain it before you put it in the fridge so that any little bits of fruit get out of there. Any other questions on week 5, week 6? This extension period that we've got going on. Finals. Anybody want to review anything? All right, well, I don't want to hold you guys here. I want to see you guys getting back in the kitchen, getting going, wrapping up week 5, getting going on week 6. If you do have any questions, if you do have anything you need to talk to me about privately, shoot me a message. I am around. I am here for you guys. It's been so much fun having you in class. I can't believe all these weeks have gone by already. We're in week 6 already. I won't see you in next class. Don't be a stranger. Don't hesitate to reach out with questions as you move on to your next class, to externship, graduation. Keep my contact info, reach out to me. I'd love to kind of hear feedback of how you guys are doing once you move on from the program. But it has been so much fun. It's been such a pleasure. I've had quite a few classes with some of you. I've had a couple, like 2-3 classes with you guys. So I've kind of like watched your whole journey, and it's been just a pleasure. And I hope you have a wonderful night. Take care. Don't be a stranger. Communicate with me. Let me know if anything is going on as we wrap up the class. I'll see you guys later.